Hey team, good morning. Dan Scarrow coming to you again by video. And as you can see, I'm in a different environment today. I am home and sitting in my living room, and you can see some of my wife's art behind us. All of our team is dispersed to their places of residence as the governor of Minnesota has asked us to shelter at home this week and next week at least. And so I want you to know that while the physical plant of the district office is closed, the work of the district office continues, and you can reach us in the same ways you've always reached us, by the phone numbers that you have and through the email. All of those are set up to reach us at home. So I just wanted to come to you today, and I want to talk about two things. And actually this video in particular is going to also be my newsletter for this month. And so we're going to double team the usefulness of video for those things. I want to say a great job to those of you that continue to press into the difficulty of being online and all the nuances of not meeting together as a church. I dialed back from 10 services that I watched last week, and I watched 3 this week and was encouraged by what I saw. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for your effort. I know that this is uncomfortable for you. It's uncomfortable for your people, but you're pressing out into this discomfort in ways that are productive and helpful. And I'm hearing from many of you as I'm talking to you on the phone that your influence is expanding. And I'm encouraged by that. I'm very excited to hear that for you and from you. And so we continue to pray for you regularly, that that influence would expand and that your impact would expand in these days that seem so awkward for all of us. Hey, since this is going to be my newsletter, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Last time, when we met together by a video last week, I mentioned 2 kind of key parts that I wanted to talk to you about. One was self-leadership, and the other was your ability to lead others. And for the purposes of this video and my newsletter, I want to just focus on one critical piece of self-leadership for you in this time that is so unusual in your life and my life. I don't think any of us have seen anything like this before. And it brings us face to face with a principle that I have been observing and documenting and working with leaders for more than 15 years. And it's a critical moment in the life of a leader that actually happens with regularity, more regularity than we would think. I've given it a name. It might not be the best name, but over the last decade or so, I've been calling it a defining crisis. And when we think of self-leadership, this idea of a defining crisis is extremely important. And let me explain it just momentarily for you. A defining crisis is that moment when your current influence, responsibility, or perhaps circumstances, sometimes it's all 3, apply more pressure to your life than your current self-leadership can support. Let me say that again. Defining crisis is that moment when your current influence, responsibility, or circumstances apply more pressure to your life than your current self-leadership can support. Now here's the thing, that happens regularly, and it happens to all of us. And so this is a principle that is beneficial for all of us to understand and know how to react to. Let me give you an example. As you were growing up as a child, the first time you went to school, you experienced a defining crisis. Pretty much every grade change since you went to school, you've had a defining crisis. You've had a new environment, you've had new learning, you've had possibly new friends. If you ever moved to a different town, you had a defining crisis. You experienced the reality of your current situation, your circumstances, and perhaps your responsibilities, putting more pressure on your life than could be supported at that moment by your self-leadership. All of us have experienced this when we got married. I don't know if you remember the first year of marriage, but that whole process of adjustment that was happening in your first year of marriage was this process of defining crisis. Your life had shifted in a way that your influence and your responsibilities and your circumstances put more pressure on your life than your self-leadership could sustain. So this has happened continually to you. And the interesting thing for all of us is that the older we get, the less we like this experience, but it continues to happen. And people stop growing because of the way they respond to the experience of a defining crisis. And friends, we are in the middle of one of those moments, a defining crisis that has fundamentally shifted the way you think about leadership, the way you implement leadership in the church, and the way you carry out the things that you've normally carried out. And some of you are thinking, well, this is temporary. And when I want you to know that while parts of this are temporary, some of this is permanent. And all of us are at a defining crisis moment. And how we respond is extremely important. So let me offer you 3 options. And I'm going to generalize these because there's really a spectrum of options when you're faced with more pressure than your life can support. The first is that we just do what we've always been doing, except we do more of it. We work harder. Maybe you've done that. You've bumped into a situation where it clearly is more than you can handle, and your option is just to work more hours and to do the same things you've always done and to manage your relationships the way you've always managed them. Now, there's some part that helps you with, and that can function for a period of time, but that has diminishing returns because over time, the harder you work and the longer you work, and you get less out of it and you get more tired, and eventually that catches up with you. And so while a good short-term response to some defining crisis, working harder is not the best long-term response. Some of us choose to escape when our life gets put under more pressure than we're used to. We choose escape, and we find a way to get away, and we pursue amusement and entertainment, and none of that is bad except when it is used to mitigate against a defining crisis. When it's used because we're under so much pressure, we're just trying to get away from it. So the first is work harder. The second is I'm going to entertain and amuse myself, and I'm going to try to escape from this issue. And the third option is by far the best option, but by far the most difficult. And that is that when we're faced with a defining crisis, we adapt and we grow. So the next question that all of us need to ask, and probably you are asking, is, well, how do I adapt and grow? Well, good news, there's a very specific path to your growth. As you find yourself face to face with a defining crisis, that moment in which your influence and responsibility and circumstances put more pressure on your life than your current self-leadership can support, there's a path through that to your growth. And that path is found in 6 questions. Now, before I mention the 6 questions, I just want you to know that adapting and growing is fundamentally built, your life is built on 6 pillars of development. And these questions represent those 6 pillars that you have to continually build to support the weight of your life. So the first question is, what new disciplines do I need? Or what disciplines do I need to adjust? There might be a modified version of that question. But the question is in regards to disciplines, because disciplines are the first pillar that help us support a life of growing influence and impact and circumstances that we didn't see coming. So you've seen this throughout the course of your life. Just to illustrate, when you were a child, you began to develop new disciplines, usually because you had to and were forced to. And as life progressed, you developed more disciplines on how to discipline yourself financially, how to manage your life, how to manage your relationships, how to manage your work. And as you continue to develop those disciplines, you grew in your ability to sustain influence and impact. That principle is true throughout the course of your life. You need new disciplines to manage the situation that you're in. And in this season where we're learning new skills, all of us need new disciplines. I'm learning new disciplines about videoing, and I'm learning new disciplines about editing, and I'm learning new disciplines about managing a staff team remotely. All of these are good. The second pillar and the second question is, what new habits do I need? Habits drive about somewhere between 70 and 77% of your life. Research tells us is habitual. Those are the things you do without giving much thought. Most of your relationships are habitual in the way they operate. When you greet somebody, you tend to do something the same way. When you say goodbye, you tend to do it the same way. When you relate to somebody, and you tend to do it the same way. Your listening skills are habitual. You've either learned to be a good listener or you've not. You're distracted and people don't really like talking to you. And some of the things you say and do are habitual. In fact, a lot of them. So one of the important questions when your life suddenly gets under pressure that you need to be asking is, what are the habits that I may or may not be aware of that might need to be shifted? That's a significant portion of your life. So it's good to ask that question. So the first pillar is disciplines that we build as we support a new life that's growing in its influence and impact. The second pillar we support and build is habits. The third pillar is, and the question that represents that pillar is, what new skills do I need? New environments and new situations demand from us a new skill set. And this happens throughout the course of a lifetime. And your willingness and ability to learn something depends greatly on your ability to succeed in terms of growing influence and impact. And I think I mentioned in the last video that new skills are something that you have to pursue. And many of us, as we get older, don't like the feeling of failure that's associated with developing new skills. Because, as I said last time on the video, you have failed at everything before you've become great at it. In fact, failure is the precursor to excellence. And you often have to fail a lot before you become excellent. And that's the cost of a new skill set. So in these days, all of us are uncomfortable. We're learning new skills. And I just want you to know that that discomfort is good. It's important and it's valuable to you. So the first pillar is new disciplines that we might need to apply, or disciplines we need to moderate. And the second pillar is habits. And the third pillar is skills. And the fourth pillar, and the question that goes with it, is, what new knowledge do I need? As life progresses, we need to constantly find new knowledge to learn and expose ourselves to things that we don't know so that we can become more than we currently are. And all of us understand this principle. If you've read a book, you understand this principle. There's things in books that tell us things we don't know. There's things on the internet that tells us things we don't know. Now, not everything on the internet is true, so we have to be careful with that. But knowledge is a significant pillar, and sometimes when you meet that moment in your life when suddenly you have more pressure than you expected, there's something you need to learn. That pillar needs to rise to support your life. So disciplines, habits, skills, and knowledge are the first four pillars. The fifth is one that's a little more challenging for some of us, but it's incredibly important. And the fifth question that it's associated with this pillar is, what new self-awareness do I need? Self-awareness is the fifth pillar that supports a growing influence and impact in our life. And many times we're simply not aware of how we come across, or how we're behaving, or how we're impacting people. And sometimes counseling is the best place for us to make discoveries about self-awareness. So I'm a big fan of counseling, actually, and would encourage you as a leader to think seriously about it for the purposes of self-awareness, to know yourself more deeply and to understand how your life and your leadership is impacting other people. So 5 pillars so far: disciplines, habits, skills, knowledge, and self-awareness. So the last one, and I think all of us would agree, probably the most important one, is represented by this question: what new levels of spiritual intimacy do I need? I need more of God as my life gets more complicated. So how do I become closer to Him? How do I hear Him better? How do I respond to Him more appropriately? How do I listen to what His Spirit is saying and do what He asks me to do? In every season of growth, there's a need for our spiritual intimacy to rise. Some of us have the philosophy, even as leaders, that we've been saved and that part's taken care of and we can just move forward with our life. And that simply is not true. So the last pillar that has to be built in a life of growing influence and impact is spiritual intimacy. So the 6, again, are disciplines, habits, skills, knowledge, self-awareness, and spiritual intimacy. And the associated questions help you in times of defining crisis to move forward. Now, you probably won't have something you need to adjust in every category, in every defining crisis. But these 6 questions are helpful. And they've been helpful to thousands of leaders as I've been teaching and training and coaching leaders over the years. I wanted to pass those along to you today because these questions are something that if you'll apply them every time your life puts more pressure on you than your current self-leadership can handle, you will find yourself growing to the next level. This is a great season for all of us. I keep reminding myself almost every morning when I wake up what a great season this is, because there's a principle that's in play here, several principles, but one particularly, and that is that all of your growth, all of my growth, occurs on the far side of my discomfort. And so whatever discomfort I'm feeling and whatever discomfort you're feeling in these days, this is a great part of your growth journey. So friends, as my newsletter and also my video for the week, I wanted to just offer you some insights about the situation that you're in, and the fact that you feel pressured is normal. And there is a response that will take you to the next level. Friends, I encourage you to take the next step, to be growing leaders, to press into your discomfort and discover that on the far side of that, you're a better person, you're a more capable leader, and you're able to fulfill the work of the kingdom more effectively. Friends, you know I care about you. I pray for you often, and I long to see God do everything He wants to do in your lives. Bless you as you press into this next week and weekend. May God fill you with joy and peace, and may He expand your influence for His glory.